I'm going to start with a very obvious question. Was that Vin Diesel in the car?
It was Vin Diesel, actually. Yeah,
It was.
I know some people who went to that Janet show, and I asked them after editing, I was like, was Vin Diesel there? And they were like, yeah, she brought him on stage.
Okay,
so that guy was right.
Okay, so you have a TIFF documentary with a Vin Diesel cameo, kind of.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so we're off to a good start.
I should ask him to executive produce.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yo, welcome to My Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy. My Ontario place is My Summer Lair Younan. When it first opened in 1971, Ontario Place was designed to reflect all that the citizens of Ontario and even Canada embodied. Our heritage, our diversity, our creativity, and even our future potential. Your Tomorrow comes from the following phrase from a 1969 Ontario Place promotional brochure for the theme park, built on 4 islands made of reclaimed land on Lake Ontario. I quote, "Ontario Place is a mirror to show you yourself, your heritage, your land, your work, your creativity, and your tomorrow." There it is. Your creativity and your tomorrow. Yeah, Ontario Place was hope and it was civic pride, but as a symbol, it's kind of now become like Detroit's car factories with those industrious assembly lines. That was then. This is now. When director Ali Weinstein began shooting Your Tomorrow entirely at Ontario Place, the park was in a state of limbo. The vision was gone, and yet the park remained. Often it was neglected, the rides were busted down, though it still offered visitors nature trails, forests, and a pebble beach. We have to do this. There's an upfront disclaimer before I play my conversation with Ali about her gentle documentary, Your Tomorrow. I'm not here to blindly bash Premier Doug Ford over Ontario Place. That loud narrative lacks nuance, and it instantly hijacks the honest conversation, and it distracts from the dreams we should be having. Yes, as is currently constructed, the deal to build a water park and a spa at Ontario Place is a flawed business deal. It's awful. None of that is in dispute. However, once the contracts are signed, however terrible they may be, and they clearly are terrible, it instantly becomes a legal matter. The more important discussion, the focus of the discussion about Ontario Place, the one we're not having because we continue to harp on Doug Ford, is what do you want? When you watch Your Tomorrow, you'll see a lot of Ontario Place's history as a proud provincial showcase. Yet by 2012, Ontario Place was closed by the government of Ontario after years of diminishing attendance and revenue. We simply stopped going. That's why it's not a Doug Ford issue. Ford was first elected in 2018. He is an issue in the future, and even the present, but he's not the primary reason why it closed in 2012. Same when Ontario Place reopened its doors in 2015, now solely as a public park with no programming. Ali shares how a community formed around the park primarily during the pandemic, especially when we were trapped in endless lockdowns. This wasn't hope for tomorrow, it was just hope for today. Ali tells me, and I quote, "What I saw at Ontario Place was a bunch of people coming together because of a shared love of a space, and then finding friends and making friendships, and a lot of those friendships were really sweet," end quote. That sweetness comes through in her documentary, Your Tomorrow, which premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival in September 2024. In this My Summer Lair conversation, she and I draw parallels between Ontario Place and Central Park in New York City. We also touch upon the loss of Honest Ed's. Ali was the executive producer of an Honest Ed's documentary, another classic Ontario landmark where we simply stopped going. Your Tomorrow silently captures Ontario Place in this limbo phase, stuck between a bright past and a murky future. Imagine the meditative calm before a neighborhood experiences life-altering gentrification. That's Ontario Place. And I'm glad she captured this window, this time, where it is stuck in this limbo, so we can evaluate what came before and decide what we want to come ahead. But before we can unpack all of that, we have to talk about Vin Diesel. Yes, the face of the Fast and Furious, fantastic movie franchise, outstanding. One of the threads in Your Tomorrow is the experiences of the current Ontario Place staff, which includes security. And one of Ali's moments captures a security guard providing directions to a lost driver. When the car takes off in the correct direction, the guard turns to his co-workers and says, "That was Vin Diesel in the car." And while not furious, his co-workers were fast to scoff at his claim. Thought I'd ask Ali about that. That's a great place to start. Was that Vin Diesel? I know for sure. I know that's Stephanie coming through with the introduction. Hit it!
Sound, the final frontier. My Summer Lair is an enterprise, a pop culture voyage with a continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new creators and celebrate established producers, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now here is your host, Sammy Younan.
There's a fascinating tension because your documentary focuses on Ontario Place, but there's a fascinating tension that runs throughout the entire documentary, Your Tomorrow, where Ontario Place is this kind of undefined place.
Yeah.
But then everybody that's using it is kind of defining it.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense then? That's kind of what's happening with Ontario Place?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I feel as if this moment, or the moment that I captured at Ontario Place, is a period of limbo in a way, where it's after the heyday of all the nostalgic memories that my parents remember there, that I remember from the 90s.
Yeah.
And
I remember that foam kind of bouncy castle park.
Yeah, you
had
do.
some old school footage of that,
Children's Village.
Children's Village, yeah.
Exactly. But I agree. Like, the Ontario Place closed down in 2012, and then they very quietly reopened their doors in 2015, but without any programming. So all of a sudden, people could just sort of like wander in and use it as a public park. And then in 2020, a lot of people started going there because we were all trying to be outside more.
Right.
Which is when I rediscovered it for myself. And yeah, what I saw there was people swimming and paddleboarding and cycling and painting and just doing all sorts of things there. And it was like, oh, this is a public space that has so many nooks and crannies. Like, for urban exploration, you know, the old rides are just wild and abandoned. And people were, as you said, defining it actively in that moment.
It mirrored a lot of Central Park, right?
Yeah.
Because Central Park has like the carousel. So if you have kids, you can go there, and it has those benches with the little plaques on them.
Yes.
And you can read about old-timey couples.
Totally.
Right? There's like, you can just go jogging. There's Shakespeare in the Park. There's like multi things you can do on a given day at Central Park.
Yes.
And it mirrored that kind of same concept.
I agree. I think that Ontario Place has been used in its sort of public park phase as this great public space for culture and for just recreation in a way that a lot of the great urban parks of the world are used.
But watching Your Tomorrow, I didn't realize Ontario Place was partially designed to be a beacon of like hope for immigrants, like a Canadian Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Right? Like, especially when it first opened, like, you produced a similar documentary, There's No Place Like This Place, Any Place, which is an Honest Ed's documentary.
Yes.
Right? And again, that was another symbol for immigrants, because that was in the 70s and 80s especially. A lot of immigrants would come, and then they could get cutlery and stuff and set up their new life here in Toronto and in Canada.
Totally, yeah.
Both like landmarks reflected that optimistic nationalism. Is that where the title like Your Tomorrow comes from? That hope?
Absolutely. I actually took the title from an Ontario Place brochure from 1969, where they describe Ontario Place as a place to showcase your work, your creativity, and your tomorrow. I mean, they list a whole bunch of stuff.
your heritage, your land, your work, and your creativity, and your tomorrow.
There you go. Yeah. And I just thought, you know, at the time that it was being built, clearly with those words, they're very much trying to make this a place for the public. It is about you as the individual, as a citizen of the province. This is your place. That's what I felt they were saying. I love that it ends with your tomorrow. It's a very like interesting kind of abstract concept.
Yeah.
But it was sort of being made in this futuristic way where a lot of the like philosophy at the time as a country was, what is our tomorrow? They were like, you know, putting out calls around that same period of time to redesign Canada's flag because it used to be the Union Jack. And we were trying to define ourselves and have pride in ourselves and who we were. So there was a lot of optimism and hope, as you said. And I just think that we don't know what our tomorrow looks like right now as a city, as a society. But,
as an Ontario Place.
Yeah, as Ontario Place. And sort of just to title the film Your Tomorrow was sort of meant to be like, what is this? What is it that we actually want? Maybe it's more of a question mark, actually.
Yeah. You used the phrase your place, and your previous documentary, #Blessed, was also about a local community here in Toronto. So between Your Tomorrow and #Blessed, what have you learned about communities? Like, how are they formed or how are they maintained? Like, people got convictions, right? And so that's why they gather.
Yeah.
But what have you kind of taken away from like hanging out with these two communities?
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting. I feel like I do naturally gravitate towards wanting to know what brings people together, like how they find that sense of community. I think we live in a very lonely era where people are on social media at home and just, living in these like by themselves often. I mean, I live alone and it's just sort of, we're very much disconnected compared to previous generations. So I'm always really interested in how people find meaning and community with one another. I mean, Blessed was about a church. And so it's a very different way of forming community than at Ontario Place. What I saw at Ontario Place was a bunch of people coming together because of a shared love of a space and then finding friends and making friendships. And a lot of those friendships were really sweet and fascinating because I think they were people who never would have met in the outside world, different ages and backgrounds and interests and jobs. And it was really fascinating to me, like what was bringing them all together. And it was sort of this shared love of this space.
And kind of like weird people, but I mean weird in a positive sense. You know
absolutely.
What I mean? Like
a lot of totally. A lot of eccentric people.
Yeah. Like there was the guy who was gardener at Ontario Place, but he wasn't hired by Ontario Place. He was just planting like sunflowers and other things that were like throughout the documentary, right?
Yes,
like,
Nunu. That's right. Yeah.
So like he just kind of wanted to like make the space better and just by planting things.
Yes.
Right? And like pulling tomatoes and things like that. Like, and he would then share the tomatoes with people, right?
Yes.
Like you can see those moments and those interactions that you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. No, and I definitely I think I also realized, okay, this will be an interesting film because some of the people I started filming with were so fascinating to me. I mean, they were, I could have made a whole film about half those people, about Nunu the gardener. He's so fascinating to me and like lovely on camera. And then there's people like
gentle spirit too.
Absolutely. And then there's people like Steve Mann, who invented this water instrument called the hydraulophone, and he plays it in the film. And he's just like there actually is a documentary just about him.
Oh, that guy needed a documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so these people were all very worthwhile subjects on their own. And a lot of them just come to Ontario Place. So it was great for me.
It fits in what you were saying before about how people find community and like you're not aware that sometimes you're not aware that these people exist in our Toronto community, right? Like, like this dude was just planting like flowers and things like that at Ontario Place. Like if he didn't end up in your documentary, none of us would ever have known. You know what I mean? Like, but there was a dude that was always out there doing this stuff.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, because when we have these discussions about Ontario Place and what to do with whatever, nobody brings up the dude who puts the flowers. You know what I mean? Like
that's a good point. And I think that was part of what also inspired me. I mean, when it came to filming the different staff that work at Ontario Place, because I think when people go there, they don't realize there's actually a ton of staff that still work there, even though a lot of the place is sort of abandoned feeling. They still are gardeners and people mowing the lawn and planting flowers and, making sure that it's safe to walk around. And I really loved working with these young university-age staff who get hired there, who don't have their own nostalgic memories of Ontario Place, but they're working there today as just like their regular summer jobs.
Yeah.
And no one, like Ontario Place is so much in the news because of the redevelopment, but no one is going to those people and asking like, what do you think should happen? Even though they're the ones there every single day.
Right, yeah.
And my goal of the film was not to ask them what they think should happen, but just to like really document what their experience is, what Nunu's experience is, like how people are interacting with the space right now.
One of the ways that you document that experience is you use a lot of like ambient sound.
Yeah.
In Your Tomorrow. Was there a specific sound philosophy, I guess for lack of a better term, in terms of going into the production? Because you let the park and the people speak for itself.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm happy that you feel that way. I did always want to make Ontario Place itself the central character of the film. And being an inanimate place, I sort of did know that it was going to have to rely a lot on good sound design. That said, I was cobbling together my budget as I was shooting. And so in the early days of shooting for the first half of the film, I couldn't afford a proper crew. So I was doing sound, which I'm not trained in. So my editor was always lamenting the fact that I was constantly talking through my audio and didn't have proper field recordings. So it was definitely a challenge once we were in the edit to gather all the accurate field recordings. But I think what you're saying is truly a testament as well to my sound designers and editors, Michelle Irving and her team, Jordan Guy and Elma Bello. They really helped to craft a beautiful sound design that felt really natural when occasionally I hadn't actually gotten good sound.
So you made them work hard is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in terms of we already alluded to it, but the whole thing of Ontario Place is in this fight and it's a political story now with Ford and all this. But for the most part, you kind of don't focus on that story. You just kind of want the park to live and breathe and kind of present itself. What was that? That was another conscious choice as well, similar to the sound philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I first conceived of the film, I really wanted to just show my own experience of Ontario Place in 2020. I was so enamored with it. I wanted to document that moment. Of course, it takes time to get any funding for a film. And by the time I was ready to start shooting at all, it was sort of shifting under my feet. And so I actually started to shoot a little bit in the summer of 2022 because I wanted to make sure I was getting some of the park before construction started. I didn't know when it was going to start. And I
related to that, by the way, was that scene where the Japanese temple bell?
Yep.
When it gets disassembled, you have footage of that. And it's a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah.
Because you see it throughout the documentary, right? And people are kind of playing with it and maybe ring and stuff like this. And so when it gets taken apart, it feels like there's it's almost like a death in the family or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was devastated when it got taken down. And I knew it was going to happen.
So to have that before and after, it gives it that, it's one of the main characters in the documentary, right?
Yeah. Well, I was really, I just always loved the temple bell there, as part of my own explorations. It's just always so beautiful and fascinating and always drew people to it. And it is a really special part of Ontario Place. I mean, it was gifted to Ontario Place by the Japanese community in 1977. And I actually filmed with the current president of the Japanese Association. We filmed quite a bit together, and I wish I could have included more, to be honest, but I wish that about a lot of stuff in the film. Because the context of it, there were several things in the film where it's okay, we don't have the time to go into the whole history. It's just too much. But people hopefully will understand the feeling of the loss, even though they might not know the entire details of the history. And they can always look into that history, if they feel like it. So it makes me happy to know that, that resonated. But yeah, going back to sort of just my own impetus with the politics, I started to film, and I was filming with this bird watcher, Francesca, and Steve, the swimmer. And then in late 2022, Ontario Place for All, which is an activist group trying to stop the spa from being built, they started becoming more active. And some of these characters in my film that I was already filming with were becoming activists themselves. And honestly, I was pulling out my hair. I was really not happy at first because I thought, this is ruining my film. I can no longer make a film that's just about this place as it is. Now I have to document the redevelopment, and that's not what I wanted to do. And also how am I going to tell time? Because I started before, it became so much more complicated. And for months I was not happy about it. But I just, I was okay, well, this is the film I'm telling now. And I'm happy that we were able in the end to weave in that sort of impending change. And there are more stakes in the film as a result. I think most people would probably say it's better for it. But it wasn't the film I set out to make.
Yeah, but I think that's always the case with documentaries because it's such a long process, right? With the feature, you have your script already, so you have a guideline.
Yes.
Right? You shoot for a couple of months and you kind of follow the guideline.
Yes.
With documentaries, you anticipate surprise.
Totally. Yeah. I guess I wasn't very good with the surprise, but it's part of the lesson of patience and calm.
Last question, though. So there's been a lot of concerts that happen at Molson Amphitheater or Budweiser Stage or whatever it's called now. Have you gone to see anybody cool over the years or really fun concerts? Because that's also part of the nostalgia and the reminiscing of Ontario Place, right?
Totally. And I will say that one thing, when I talk to people about this film, almost everyone has their own memories they want to share with me.
That must be a nice feeling.
It's really nice. Yeah, it's really, really special. there's a lot of people who are older than me who will say Ontario Place was never the same after they got rid of the Forum stage, which was demolished in the 90s. So I don't personally have memories of it, but it was this revolving stage with this huge, like the way that Bud Stage has a lawn, the Forum was like surrounded 360 degrees by a sloped lawn. So people could just like lie in the grass and listen to music, and they would bring in like the biggest bands. It was all free and like part of going to Ontario Place. So I think as much as we love Bud Stage, and we do, Bud Stage is amazing. The experience of watching a concert on the lawn is like such a unique Toronto special thing. You know, that's already like a slightly like more corporate version of what was previously there. And it is going to become more so because as part of the redevelopment plan, they are actually expanding Bud Stage, and they're going to enclose the whole thing so it can be year round. To answer your question,
kind of doesn't like, it's fine, but it's also like you want the lawn, you want that summer breeze, and you want
it's like, special. It's such a special place to see a show in Toronto, and that is going to be lost. I don't know. I've seen a lot of shows there, and they've all been really like fun and amazing. I had a really fun time last year seeing Fish for the first time in my life. I know a couple people who are real like Fish heads, and I got taken to the concert, and it was like really fun to go experience that.
Was it trippy, and like did you see the cosmos? Or?
I mean, I wasn't quite there with all the guys who have seen like 100 shows, but I had a really good time. That was memorable. Actually, I had a chance to film Blue Rodeo there this past summer. Believe it or not, that didn't make it into the film because that's how much great stuff we had, but they were amazing. They kind of like, I wasn't previously like a big Blue Rodeo fan, but after that shoot, I am. They were so great.
Okay, that's great. So we started on Vin Diesel, we're ending on Blue Rodeo.
You know, all the different
that's
celebs.
That's a lot of pop culture. And so the documentary Your Tomorrow is going to have a theatrical release.
Yes.
That's very exciting.
Yes. And we don't know the exact date yet, but we're looking like later in the fall, late October, early November. We have an Instagram account that people can follow if they want to know the exact date of when they can go see it again. And that's Your Tomorrow Doc.
All right. I'll put it in the show notes as well. So, but for now, congratulations on TIFF. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
I hope this TIFF screenings go well.
Thanks very much. I'm really excited.
Anybody who can't see it, well, there's Your Tomorrow to see it, right? Like to.
Yes. Hopefully I'll see you Your Tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Yo, that was Ali, the director of Your Tomorrow, and I'm Sammy, host of My Summer Lair. After TIFF, I'll share some upcoming screenings for Your Tomorrow, the Ontario Place documentary at mysummerlair.com. mysummerlair.com. Now then, if Toronto aspires to become a world-class city, it is a world-class city, but it can do better. What do you want? What will make this a fantastic city? Look, I was upset when they closed down Honest Ed's. At the time, a friend of mine was writing Spider-Man comics for Marvel. He was doing a comic book signing at the Beguiling, which back then was around the corner from Honest Ed's. Remember when all that was in the one block area there? I dropped by as the signing wrapped up to take him out to dinner, and we cut through Honest Ed's. My friend, he lived in New York City, and yet he'd never seen anything like Honest Ed's. At the time, looking around at all the signs and the chaos, he said it's like a physical manifestation of the internet. That's an amazing visual. If you've ever been to Honest Ed's or you remember Honest Ed's, like, it's an amazing visual. We all got upset when Honest Ed's closed, but truthfully, if we're going to be honest here, we like the Walmart convenience and Dollarama and fast 24-hour Amazon Prime shipping. So we stopped going. We stopped buying. And it's the same thing with Ontario Place. While I've gone to some concerts at the Budweiser stage, I haven't visited or even really thought about Ontario Place in decades. Nobody says, what should we do this weekend? Let's go to Ontario Place. As we ease into the 2000s, we all simply stopped going. You could argue maybe the programming wasn't good or there wasn't enough for kids to do, so families logically went to Canada's Wonderland. Or that it's not a tourist attraction like the ROM or the Bata Shoe Museum. All of that may be true and it all may be valid. Yet for whatever reason, the bottom line is still the same. we stopped going. So much so that by 2012, the government of Ontario closed Ontario Place. That's it. We stopped going. This was an us problem. So many people were furious that Honest Ed's closed, but it's a store. We don't invest well in Toronto. What do you want to see in the city? When Ontario Place opened, it was designed to showcase hope. What showcases hope for you now? What's a gleaming symbol that represents a vision of the future? I want to expand on all these emotions and talk about vision and give people an opportunity to yell at me for not throwing Doug Ford under the bus. I know, I put that disclaimer up front and I stand by it. My Pal Sammy is a weekly newsletter. Google My Pal Sammy and like your best Ontario Place memories. It'll instantly appear. Every week there's joy and fun and utter pop culture delight. Want to make your tomorrow even better? Sign up for My Pal Sammy. Google My Pal Sammy, sign up today, and you can instantly begin to enjoy my other Ontario Place. Thank you so much for listening to me in the Netflix world. Ontario Place, yo.